For his next viral hit, a popular influencer pointed what looked like a vlogging camera at the tomb guard. But it wasn't a lens he was hiding. It was a trigger. And the shot he fired would shatter more than just the sacred silence. The late morning sun cast a reverent glow over Arlington National Cemetery, the air thick with the scent of cut grass and the profound weight of history. Here, silence was not an absence of sound, but a presence, a living tribute to the tens of thousands of souls resting beneath the manicured lawns. At the heart of this hallowed ground stood the tomb of the unknown soldier, a stark white marble sarcophagus guarded with a devotion bordering on the divine. Upon that sacred stage stood Sergeant Marcus Thorne. At 29, his posture was carved from years of discipline, his face a mask of serene focus beneath the polished visor of his cap. His movements were a form of prayer, each of the 21 steps echoing a 21-gun salute, each turn and pause a meditation on duty. Pinned to the immaculate fabric of his dress blues, just above a row of service ribbons, was the silver star. It wasn't just metal, it was a testament to a single, searing moment in the mountains of Afghanistan, a memory of a fallen brother that fueled every step he took. To Marcus, this wasn't a post, it was a covenant. He was the living barrier between the chaos of the world and the peace of the honored dead. That chaos arrived in a blast of neon color and loud laughter. Kai Vance, a 22-year-old from California with bleached tips in his hair and a graffiti print hoodie, surveyed the scene with the eyes of a predator searching for content. His YouTube channel, Kai5's High Fives, was a monument to manufactured absurdity, built on a foundation of public pranks that teetered on the edge of harassment. "This is it, Mia," he murmured, his voice a conspiratorial whisper into the microphone clipped to his shirt. "The algorithm is gonna eat this up." Mia, his girlfriend and reluctant cinematographer, adjusted the focus on her phone. "I don't know, Kentucky. This place, it feels different. Look at these people." Her lens swept over solemn families and elderly veterans, their faces etched with a quiet grief Kyler seemed incapable of perceiving. "Different is good. Different gets clicks," he shot back, his grin unwavering. "They want boring, they can watch a history documentary. We're here to make history. Roll camera." He stepped away from the main crowd, into an open space on the plaza. With a wink to Mia's camera, he began to move, his body jerking in the spastic, flailing motions of a viral TikTok dance. The jarring movements were a flagrant desecration of the surrounding quiet. A few teenagers stifled laughs, but for most, it was like a scream in a library. "Dude, stop," Mia hissed, lowering her phone. "You're being a jerk." "I'm being an entertainer," Kyler retorted, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of transgression. He finished his dance with a flourish, bowing to the silent, disapproving audience. "And we're just getting started." He started walking towards the main plaza, straight for Sergeant Thorne. As Kyler strode closer to the guard's patrol mat, the atmosphere grew tense. He began a mock narration, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "And here we observe the Homo sapiens uniformis, or the common ceremonial guard. Note the rigid posture, the 1,000-yard stare. A truly fascinating specimen of terminal boredom." Near the edge of the plaza, Mr. Harrison, a 70-year-old Marine veteran in a wheelchair, watched with a quiet fury. He had come today, as he did every year, to sit in silent communion with a friend who had returned from Vietnam in a flag-draped casket. He placed a hand over his wife's, his knuckles white. "This punk," he muttered, his voice a low growl. "He has no idea where he's standing." Kyler, feeding off the negative attention, grew bolder. He began to circle Sergeant Thorne, who remained impassive, his gaze locked on the horizon. His training was a fortress, built to withstand any siege of disrespect. Yet, behind his sunglasses, Marcus tracked every move. He noted the expensive, scuffed sneakers, the desperate hunger for attention. He'd seen it before, but never with this level of malice. "Seriously, bro," Kyler continued, leaning in conspiratorially. "Is this, like, a good gig? Do you get benefits? What's the pay on something like this?" I bet an AI could do your job for, what, $10 an hour? Mia's unease was palpable. Kai, let's go. We have enough footage. Nah, the climax is coming, he whispered back, his eyes fixed on the decorations on Thorne's chest. He pointed. Look at all this bling. You get these for perfect attendance. He took another step, crossing a line that was invisible but universally understood. He reached out a hand, his finger extending towards the gleaming silver star. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. It was a tiny movement, but the violation was immense. Before his finger could make contact, a firm voice cut through the air. Sir, that is enough. Ranger Miller, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, had stepped forward. Her hand was resting near the radio on her hip. You will maintain a respectful distance from the tomb guard. This is your only warning. Mr. Harrison watched, his jaw tight. He saw the flicker of annoyance in Kyler's eyes, the way his smile faltered for a second before snapping back into place, more defiant than before. The boy wasn't just ignorant, he was proud of it. Ranger Miller held his gaze for a long moment before nodding curtly and stepping back, though her eyes remained locked on him. The warning had been given. The fuse had been lit. The ranger's warning should have been a stop sign. For Kyler, it was a green light. Being singled out by authority was just another scene for his video, proof of his edgy credentials. He turned to Mia, his voice low and urgent. Did you get that? That was gold. Now for the finale. This is the shot that'll get us on the news. No, Kentucky. Please, Mia begged, her face pale. This is wrong. We need to leave. Trust me, he said, his ego now in complete control. He unzipped his backpack and pulled out his primary prop. It was a high-pressure water gun, cleverly housed inside the shell of a professional vlogging camera and mounted on a gimbal for effect. To the uninitiated, it looked like he was preparing to film a cinematic close-up. He held it up, feigning a check of the settings. The crowd watched, a mixture of confusion and dread settling over them. They could sense he was about to do something, but they couldn't fathom the depths of his disrespect. Mr. Harrison, however, saw it. He had seen the look in Kyler's eyes before, the arrogant glee of someone who believed there were no consequences. He pushed the wheels of his chair forward slightly. Son, don't you dare, he called out, his voice cracking with emotion. Have some respect. Kyler either didn't hear him or didn't care. He was in his own world, a director staging his masterpiece. He grinned for Mia's camera, the picture of unearned confidence. April Fools, Sergeant, he yelled, his voice echoing across the silent marble. He aimed the device. 3, 2, 1. He pulled the trigger. A thick, powerful stream of water erupted from the fake lens, striking Sergeant Thorne with shocking force. It hit him square in the face and chest, splashing across his sunglasses and soaking the front of his uniform. The water clung to the ribbons and dripped, with obscene slowness, down the silver face of the star he had earned with a brother's blood. The world stopped. The playful gurgle of the water gun was the only sound in a sudden, suffocating vacuum. Phones dropped. Mouths hung open. The sacred silence hadn't just been broken, it had been violently murdered. Kyler held his pose for a moment, waiting for the laughter, for the outrage, for any reaction at all. But all he received was the profound, damning quiet of a desecrated church. As the cold water dripped from his chin, Sergeant Thorne didn't feel the chill. He felt the heat of a Kandahar afternoon. The water hitting his silver star triggered a memory, not of the firefight, but of the quiet moment after, when he knelt beside his friend, Specialist Caden Young, and made a silent promise to never let his sacrifice be forgotten. The prank wasn't just an insult to him, it was a sacrilege against that promise. It was a violation of Caden's memory. His training demanded he remain motionless. But his duty to the fallen demanded more. In a single, fluid motion that was shockingly fast yet perfectly controlled, Sergeant Thorne broke his ceremonial stillness. He took one step off the black mat, closing the distance between them. His white-gloved hand shot out, not in a fist, but with an open palm. It didn't strike Kyler. It enveloped his wrist in a grip of pure, unyielding steel. It was the grip of a man who had carried the weight of a wounded comrade, a grip that contained immense power, held in perfect check. With his other hand, he plucked the water gun from Kyler's now limp grasp, holding it as if it were a piece of contaminated evidence. Kyler's smug grin dissolved into a mask of pure terror. "Hey, man, it was a joke. It's just water," he stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak. Then, Sergeant Thorne spoke. His voice wasn't a shout. It was low, precise, and carried the authority of 1,000 years of military tradition. It cut through the silence like a surgeon's scalpel. "Your joke is an insult to every soldier who gave their life for the freedoms you so casually abuse." The words hung in the air, each one a heavy stone. Kyler's face went white. The bravado, the confidence, the entire persona he had built for his channel crumbled into dust, revealing the scared, foolish boy underneath. Ranger Miller and 2 other officers were there in seconds. "Sergeant, we have it from here," she said, her voice taut but professional. Marcus Thorne released Kyler's wrist, the pressure vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. He took one step back onto his mat, his posture once again flawless, his presence an unshakable mountain. He had not raised his voice, had not used excessive force, but he had utterly dominated the situation, his dignity a weapon far more potent than Kyler's juvenile prank. The crowd, which had been frozen in shock, now buzzed with activity. Phones were raised again, no longer to capture a prank, but to document the swift, righteous consequence. Kyler stood trembling, utterly exposed, as Ranger Miller began to speak. "You are being detained for interfering with a government ceremony and disorderly conduct on federal property." As Ranger Miller and her colleague began to escort a pale, trembling Kyler away from the plaza, a new obstacle appeared in their path. Mr. Harrison had wheeled himself directly in front of them, his wife standing beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Wait," Mr. Harrison said. His voice was quiet, but it commanded the attention of everyone nearby. He wasn't looking at the Rangers, his gaze was fixed on Kyler. "You think this is a stage," he began, his voice thick with a lifetime of suppressed grief. "You think he's an actor in a costume." He gestured with his head towards the tomb. "I'm here today for Corporal David Miller. We served together in the 3rd Marines. He was 20 years old when he died in my arms outside of Key San. He never got to start a YouTube channel. He never got to go to college. He never got to meet his own daughter." Tears streamed freely down the old man's weathered cheeks. "That guard," he said, his voice breaking, "stands there for David. He stands there for all of them. The uniform you soaked, the medals you mocked, they were paid for. They were paid for with lives. With boys like my David." He leaned forward in his wheelchair, the intensity in his eyes pinning Kyler in place. "You didn't just play a prank, son. You danced on their graves." The word struck Kyler with the force of a physical blow. The last vestiges of his defiance shattered. This was no longer about a viral video gone wrong. It was about a man named David Miller. It was about sacrifice made real. I didn't know," Kyler whispered, the excuse turning to ash in his mouth. For the first time, it was not a defense, but a confession of his own profound failure. "I'm so sorry." Mia was openly sobbing now, stepping forward to touch Mr. Harrison's arm. "We're so sorry, sir. He's an idiot. We didn't understand." In the stark, quiet security office, the full weight of the consequences descended. A federal agent calmly explained the charges: disruption of a military ceremony, disorderly conduct, disrespect to a sentinel. There would be a court date, a significant fine, and a permanent ban from all national cemeteries. Kyler sat hunched in a chair, his head in his hands, Mr. Harrison's words about David Miller echoing in his mind. Back at the tomb, Sergeant Marcus Thorne completed his watch. The sun was beginning to dry the dark patch on his uniform. He stared forward, his gaze fixed on the horizon, but his thoughts were with Caden Young, with David Miller, and with the countless unknowns he was sworn to protect. The disrespect had stung, but it had also clarified. It had reinforced the profound importance of his duty. He stood guard not against pranksters, but against forgetting. And he would not falter. The incident at Arlington didn't just go viral, it ignited a firestorm. Kyler's High Fives channel was inundated with a tidal wave of outrage. Within a week, he posted a new video. It was a sterile, heavily scripted apology, filmed against a gray wall. He talked about making a mistake and learning a lesson, but his eyes were hollow, his words lacking the raw shame he had shown in the face of Mr. Harrison's grief. The video was downvoted into oblivion. The comment section, however, became an unexpected forum, a national town hall on the meaning of honor, respect, and sacrifice in the modern age. News outlets picked up the story, but they focused less on Kyler and more on the tomb guards. They ran features on their grueling training, their unwavering dedication, and the history of the tomb itself. For the first time in years, a national spotlight shone brightly on the quiet sentinels. Weeks later, on a crisp, clear afternoon, a new crowd gathered at the tomb. A father stood with his young son, well back from the patrol mat. "You see that soldier, son?" the father whispered, his voice filled with reverence. "He stands here no matter how hot or cold it is. He protects the memory of heroes. Some people forget how important that is, but we don't. We remember." A new guard was on duty, his steps as precise and unwavering as Sergeant Thorne's had been. He marched back and forth, a living embodiment of the nation's promise to its fallen. The eternal watch continued, its rhythm unbroken, its meaning now resonating with a renewed clarity across a country that had been reminded of what truly deserved to be honored. The silence had returned to Arlington, no longer just an absence of noise, but a shared, deeply understood respect. What does honor mean to you in today's world? Is it an outdated concept, or is it more important than ever? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Your perspective matters in this conversation. And if you believe stories of courage and duty need to be told, consider subscribing and sharing this one. Thank you for watching.